My name is Margaret Rose Collins, and I'm 65 years old now. I'm sitting here on my back porch with the evening settling soft around me, watching the fireflies start their dance in the garden, and I find myself thinking it's time. Time to tell the story I've kept close to my heart for 47 years. Time to speak the truth about the year I turned 18, and made a choice that changed everything. You see, when I was just a girl, barely grown really, I married a man I didn't know. A man who was 42 years old. A man who never showed his face to anyone. And on our wedding night, when he finally removed the mask he always wore, I froze. Not from horror, though maybe that would have been easier to understand. No, I froze because what I saw broke my heart in ways I didn't even know hearts could break. But let me start at the beginning, the way stories ought to be told. Let me take you back to 1977. To a little town in Kentucky where the mountains cradle the valleys and folks still knew their neighbors' names. We lived in a small house on Hickory Lane, me, my mama, my daddy, and my 3 younger sisters. Daddy worked at the coal mine, same as most men in our town. It was honest work, hard work, the kind that put food on the table but never quite enough to get ahead. Mama took in sewing and mending, her fingers moving quick over fabric in the lamplight while we girls did our homework at the kitchen table. We weren't rich, but we had love. We had laughter. We had Sunday dinners and front porch evenings, and the kind of peace that comes from knowing where you belong. Then everything fell apart. It started when Daddy got hurt in a cave-in at the mine. He survived, thank the Lord, but his back was never right after that. The company paid some, but not enough. Not nearly enough. Then the medical bills started coming, each one bigger than the last. And while Daddy was laid up healing, Mama had to take over everything, the bills, the house, trying to stretch every dollar until it screamed. My sisters were 14, 12, and 9. They were too young to understand why we started eating beans and cornbread most nights, why Mama's face got so tired, why the electricity got turned off that one cold February week. But I understood. I was 18, and I understood perfectly. I'd been working at the general store since I was 16. Saving money for secretarial school. I had dreams, you know? I wanted to move to Lexington, get a good job, maybe meet a nice young man, and have a little apartment with my own kitchen. The kind of dreams every girl has when she's young and the world still feels full of possibility. Then one night in March, Mama sat me down at the kitchen table after my sisters had gone to bed. The lamp cast shadows on her face, making her look older than her 40 years. "Maggie," she said, using the name she'd called me since I was born. "We're going to lose the house." Just like that. Simple words that meant the end of everything. "The bank sent the final notice today," she continued, her voice steady even though her hands were shaking. "We have 60 days. Your daddy can't work yet, and I can't make enough with the sewing. I've tried everything, baby. I've begged and borrowed and there's nothing left to try." I looked at my mama, this woman who'd raised 4 girls on love and determination, and I saw defeat in her eyes for the first time in my life. "There has to be something," I said. "I can work more hours." "I can. You already work every hour the store will give you," Mama said gently. "And it's not enough, sweetheart. It's just not enough." We sat there in that dim kitchen, and I felt my dreams slipping away like water through my fingers. But more than that, I felt something else. A determination, fierce and hot, rising up in my chest. I would not let my family lose everything. I would not let my little sisters go homeless. Whatever it took, I would find a way. I just didn't know yet what that way would be. His name was William Ashford, though most folks in town just called him that rich recluse up on Ashford Hill. He'd moved into the old Ashford estate about 3 years before. It had belonged to his family for generations, but he'd been living somewhere up north until he came back. Nobody really knew much about him except 3 things. He was wealthy, he was alone, and he always wore a mask. Not a Halloween mask, mind you. This was a proper mask, made of fine black silk that covered everything from his forehead down to his jaw. It had openings for his eyes and mouth, fitted close to his face. Folks said he wore it because of an illness, or terrible burns, or a birth defect. The stories changed depending on who was telling them. Children would dare each other to sneak up his long driveway. Teenagers made up ghost stories about him. Church ladies would lower their voices when they spoke about him. shaking their heads with that particular look that meant they were either praying for someone or gossiping about them. Sometimes both. But I'd actually met Mr. Ashford once, about a year before our troubles started. He'd come into the general store on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. I was the only one working the counter, and when the bell above the door rang and I looked up to see him walk in, my heart jumped a little. Not from fear exactly, but from the strangeness of it. This tall man in an expensive coat and that black silk mask, moving through our plain little store like something from another world. "Good afternoon," I said, because Mama had raised me to be polite to everyone, mask or no mask. He paused, and I could see his eyes behind the mask, dark brown, deep and sad like old well water. "Good afternoon, miss. I'm looking for some items. Perhaps you could help me." His voice was educated, cultured, the kind you hear on the radio but not often in our town. But it was kind too. Gentle. "Of course, sir. What do you need?" We walked through the store together, and he selected items carefully: good coffee, imported tea, fine writing paper. He asked about my day, about the town, simple questions that most people didn't bother asking a store clerk. When he paid, he left a generous tip and thanked me by name. He'd read it off my name tag, but something about the way he said Margaret made it sound almost musical. "You're very kind," he said before he left. "That's rarer than people think." After that, he came in every few weeks, always polite, always asking for me specifically. We'd talk while I rang up his purchases. Nothing deep, just pleasant conversation. He never mentioned the mask, and I never asked. That was his business, I figured. So when Mrs. Patterson, the pastor's wife, came to our house that April evening and said Mr. Ashford wanted to speak with my parents about a matter of great importance, I was curious but not frightened. Daddy was up and moving by then, though still careful with his back. He and Mama exchanged worried looks. What could William Ashford want with us? "Mama wondered aloud." "Only one way to find out," Daddy said. They went the next day, and I stayed home with my sisters, trying to distract them with games while my mind spun with questions. When my parents came back 3 hours later, they looked like they'd been struck by lightning. Mama sat down heavily in her chair. Daddy paced by the window. Neither of them spoke for what felt like forever. "Mama," I finally said. "What happened?" Daddy turned to me, and I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Something broken and desperate and loving all at once. "He wants to marry you, Maggie," Daddy said. "William Ashford wants to marry you." The words didn't make sense at first. They just hung in the air like something impossible. "What?" I whispered. Mama found her voice. "He made us a proposition, baby," he said. She stopped, pressing her hand to her mouth. Daddy continued, his voice rough. "He said he knows about our situation. The house, the debts, all of it. He said he wants to help, but he can't just give us money. People would talk, and we have our pride. But if you married him, he could pay everything as part of the marriage arrangement. The house would be saved. All the debts cleared. He'd settle a sum on your sisters for their futures." "Why?" I asked. "Why would he do that?" "He said he's lonely," Mama said softly. "He said he's been alone too long, and he wants companionship. He said you've always been kind to him when others weren't. He said," her voice broke. "He said he knows the age difference is considerable and that it's not a normal proposal, but he promises to treat you with respect and honor. He said you'd have your own rooms, your own freedom, that the marriage would be what you make of it." I felt like I was floating somewhere above my body, watching this conversation happen to someone else. "How old is he?" 42, Daddy said. 24 years older than me. Old enough to be my father. I told him no, Daddy continued fiercely. I told him my daughter's not for sale, that we'd figure something else out. "But there is nothing else, is there?" I heard myself say. "You said yourself, Daddy. There's nothing else to try." The silence that followed was heavy as stone. "Maggie, no," Mama said. "You're 18 years old. You should be thinking about dances and boys your own age and secretarial school, not sacrificing yourself for us." "Is it really sacrifice if I choose it?" I asked quietly. That night, I lay in bed with my youngest sister Sarah curled up beside me, her small hand tucked in mine. She'd started having nightmares about losing the house, about having to leave. She was only 9 years old, and already carrying worries no child should carry. I need not to be alone anymore. That's the truth of it. Why me? I asked. You could marry someone your own age. Someone who'd be a more suitable match. Because you see me, he said simply. Most people look at the mask and that's all they see, a curiosity, a monster, something to gossip about. But you've always looked me in the eye and spoken to me like I'm just a person. Do you know how rare that is? I hadn't thought about it that way. Now, he continued, what are your conditions? I took a breath. First, my family's debts must be cleared before the wedding, and you'll need to put it in writing that they'll never be at risk again. Second, my sisters need trust funds for their education and futures, equal amounts for all three. Third, I want to continue my education. If I want to take classes or study, you'll support that. And fourth, I hesitated. Go on, he encouraged. Fourth, I want honesty between us. I don't know why you wear the mask, and maybe it's not my business yet. But if we're going to be married, I need to know I can trust you. I need to know you'll tell me the truth when it matters. He was quiet for a long moment. Those are more than fair conditions, Margaret. I accept them all. And I'll add one more. You will have complete freedom in this marriage. Your own rooms, your own life. I will never force my company on you or make demands you're not comfortable with. This arrangement will be whatever you need it to be. And if I want to leave? I asked. Then you leave, he said. The debts stay paid, the trusts remain funded, and you walk away with a generous settlement. That's also in writing. It was almost too good to be true. Almost. Why the mask? I asked softly. You don't have to tell me everything, but I need to understand something about it. He stood and walked to the window, his back to me. I was in an accident several years ago. A fire. My face was badly burned. I've had surgeries, but the scarring is extensive. I wear the mask because it's easier for everyone. Easier for people not to see. Easier for me not to watch them try to hide their reaction. Do you plan to wear it forever? I don't know, he said honestly. But I promise you this. On our wedding night, I'll show you the truth. All of it. And then you can decide if you want to stay, or if you want the marriage annulled. Either way, your family keeps everything. My word on it. I stood and walked to where he stood by the window. He was tall, and I had to look up to meet his eyes through the mask. Then I accept your proposal, William, I said. I'll marry you. We married on a Saturday in June, just 2 months after that conversation in his library. It was a simple ceremony at the small church in town, with only our families present. The whole town was buzzing with gossip, of course, the poor coal miner's daughter marrying the rich recluse S.E., the 18-year-old bride and the 42-year-old groom in his mysterious mask. Let them talk, I thought. They don't know the truth of it. Mama had made my dress, working on it late at night with tears running down her face. It was simple but beautiful, with lace at the collar that had belonged to my grandmother. My sisters stood with me, their faces a mixture of happiness and confusion. They knew this was saving our family, but they didn't quite understand what I was giving up. Daddy walked me down the aisle, and when he placed my hand in William's, he whispered, "You don't have to do this, Maggie girl. Even now, we can turn around." But I looked at William, at this man in his fine suit and his black mask who'd offered everything he had to help my family, and I said clearly, "I do." When it came time for William to say his vows, his voice was steady and sure. "I take you, Margaret Rose Collins, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to honor you, to respect you, to care for you all the days of my life. I promise to give you freedom and kindness and honesty. This I vow before God and these witnesses." The pastor looked uncertain about the kiss. How does a masked man kiss his bride? But William simply lifted my hand and pressed his lips to it through the silk. A gesture so gentle it brought tears to my eyes. We were married. The reception was at our house that William had saved, and it was strange seeing my two worlds collide. William's housekeeper had sent over food, good food, more than our family had seen in months. My relatives ate and celebrated, and tried not to stare at my new husband. William sat quietly, speaking when spoken to, always polite, always gracious. My baby sister Sarah climbed into his lap at one point, innocent as children are, and asked, "Are you going to take Maggie away?" I watched William carefully cradle her small form. Only if she wants to come, he said gently. But you can visit any time you like. Would you like that? She nodded, and just like that, the tension in the room eased a little. As evening came, it was time to leave. Mama hugged me tight, whispering blessings and prayers into my hair. Daddy pressed a kiss to my forehead. My sisters cried, even though they'd see me soon. And I climbed into William's car, an elegant black automobile that probably cost more than our house, and we drove up the hill to the Ashford estate. To my new home. To my new life. To whatever truth waited for me behind that mask. The house was quiet when we arrived. The housekeeper, Mrs. Davies, had already retired for the evening, leaving soft lights burning throughout the rooms. William led me upstairs to a suite of rooms that took my breath away. A beautiful bedroom decorated in soft blues and creams, a sitting room with a wall of windows overlooking the gardens, and a bathroom with a tub bigger than my childhood bedroom. "This is your space," William said, standing in the doorway. "My rooms are down the hall. There's a bell if you need anything, and Mrs. Davies will help you with whatever you require." He started to leave, to give me privacy, but I found my voice. "William." He turned back. "You promised," I said softly. "You promised to show me the truth tonight." I watched his shoulders tense. "Margaret, you've had a long day. We can." "No," I said, more firmly than I felt. "If we're going to build any kind of life together, even just as companions, we need to start with honesty. You promised." For a long moment he stood there. Then slowly he walked into my sitting room and closed the door behind him. He moved to stand by the window where the evening light was fading into purple dusk. "Please sit down," he said quietly. I sat in one of the upholstered chairs, my wedding dress rustling around me, my heart beating so hard I thought he might hear it. "Before I show you," he said, still facing the window, "I need to tell you the whole story. The mask isn't just about the scars, Margaret. It's about why I have them. It's about what I've done." His voice was heavy with something I couldn't quite name. Shame, maybe, or grief so old it had settled into his bones. 10 years ago, he began, I was a different man. I lived in Philadelphia, worked for my father's company, and I was engaged to be married to a woman named Elizabeth. She was beautiful and kind, and I loved her the way young men love, carelessly, assuming we had all the time in the world. He paused, and I could see his hands clenching at his sides. I also had a younger brother, James. He was 23, just starting out in life, full of dreams and ambition. He looked up to me, wanted to be like me, followed me everywhere. Something in his tone made my stomach clench with dread. There was another man, a business rival of my father's named Harold Preston. He and my father had been feuding for years over some contracts, some money, stupid things that seemed important at the time. Harold made threats, but we thought they were just talk. Rich men talk big but rarely act. William turned slightly, and I could see his profile against the darkening window. One night, Elizabeth and I were supposed to go to dinner. James asked if he could use my car. His was in the shop. I said yes, of course. Why wouldn't I? But Elizabeth was running late, so we took her car instead. I gave James my keys and told him to pick up my suit from the cleaners on his way home. His voice broke, and he stopped. "William," I whispered, but he held up a hand. "Harold Preston had planted a bomb in my car," he said flatly. "He meant to kill me. But instead, when James turned the key in the ignition, the car exploded. He died instantly. And Elizabeth, she'd been walking out to meet us, had seen James get in my car. She ran toward him when she heard the explosion. The fire." He stopped, his whole body shaking now. "She made it to the hospital, but the burns were too severe. She lived for 3 days. 3 days of agony, and all I could do was sit by her bedside and know it should have been me. It was meant for me. They died because of me, because of my family's stupid feud, because I gave James my keys without thinking twice." "Oh, William." I breathed, tears streaming down my face now. "I tried to reach her after the explosion," he continued. "Tried to pull her from the fire. That's when I got these." He gestured to the mask. "But mine are nothing. Nothing compared to what she suffered. What James suffered. They died in my place, Margaret. Do you understand? They died instead of me." He finally turned to face me fully, and even behind the mask, I could see the devastation in his eyes. Harold Preston was caught, tried and convicted. He's in prison for life. But that doesn't bring them back. My father died of a heart attack 6 months later. Grief killed him as surely as any bomb. My mother, she couldn't look at me after that. Moved to Europe, and we haven't spoken in years. And me? I couldn't stand to be in Philadelphia anymore, couldn't stand to be around people who knew the story. So I came here, to my family's old estate, and I've been hiding ever since. He reached up slowly, his hands trembling, and began to untie the silk strings that held the mask in place. This is what I am, Margaret. A man who got his brother and his fiancée killed. A man who couldn't protect the people he loved. A man who wears this mask not just to hide his scars, but to hide from the world he doesn't deserve to be part of anymore. The mask came away, and I saw his face for the first time. The scars were there, yes, burns that had healed but left the left side of his face textured and discolored, pulling slightly at his eye and mouth. But that's not what made me freeze. It wasn't horror at his appearance that stopped my breath. It was the sorrow. The absolute, crushing sorrow I saw etched into every line of his face, masked and unmasked. It was seeing a man who'd been carrying a weight so heavy for so long that it had become part of him. I stood slowly and crossed the room to where he stood. He flinched slightly, as if expecting me to recoil. Instead, I reached up, had to go on my tiptoes even though he was sitting now on the window seat, and I touched his scarred cheek gently. "William," I said softly, "you didn't kill them. A madman with a bomb killed them. You were supposed to die, and you didn't. That's not your fault." "I should have protected them," he said, his voice raw. "I should have." "You couldn't have known," I said firmly. "You couldn't have predicted what a monster would do. You gave your brother your car keys. That was an act of kindness, not murder." "But if I had just—" "No," I said, and I made him look at me. "You can't carry this forever, William. They wouldn't want you to. Would Elizabeth want you to hide away from the world? Would James want you to punish yourself for his death?" "I don't know what they'd want," he whispered. "I don't know anything anymore except that I'm tired, Margaret. I'm so tired of carrying alone. And right there, on my wedding night in my beautiful new rooms with this broken man before me, I made a choice. Not the choice I'd made 2 months ago to save my family. That was duty. This was something else entirely. I wrapped my arms around William and held him while he cried. This man twice my age, this stranger I'd married, this person carrying more grief than anyone should have to bear. I held him and let him break and promised him silently that he didn't have to be alone with it anymore. Our life together began slowly, carefully, like two strangers learning to dance without stepping on each other's toes. William kept his promise about giving me freedom. I had my own rooms, my own space, and he never presumed to intrude. But gradually, cautiously, we began to find our way to each other. We'd have breakfast together in the morning room, talking about small things, the weather, the garden, what I was reading. William had given me free access to his extensive library, and I discovered a love for books I never knew I had. He'd ask what I thought about different authors, different ideas, and he listened when I spoke like my thoughts actually mattered. I started taking classes at the community college, literature, history, even some bookkeeping. William would help me study, quiz me before exams, celebrate when I got good grades. He never made me feel foolish for not knowing things, only encouraged my curiosity. My family visited often. Daddy's back healed properly with the physical therapy William paid for. Mama took up painting, something she'd always wanted to do but never had time for. My sisters were thriving, knowing their futures were secure. Watching them flourish, knowing they were safe, that made every sacrifice worth it. But there were hard days too. The town gossip never fully died down. I'd go into the general store and feel eyes following me, hear whispers that stopped when I got close. Some called me a gold digger. Others pitted me, married to. "You carry, there's a good man. I see him. And maybe I want to be the person who helps you see him too." That was the night things changed between us. William didn't move into my rooms or anything like that. We still maintained our separate spaces. But the wall between us, the careful distance we'd kept, started to crumble. We began taking walks together in the evenings through the estate grounds. He'd tell me stories about his childhood, about James and their adventures, about Elizabeth and the life they'd planned. Not dwelling in the grief, but remembering the good parts, learning to speak their names without drowning. I told him about my dreams, the things I wanted to do and see and become. He listened and asked questions and treated my 18-year-old aspirations with the same seriousness he'd give to a business proposal. I want to matter, I told him one evening as we watched the sunset paint the sky pink and gold. I want my life to count for something beyond just surviving. You already matter, Margaret, he said softly. You've mattered since the day you looked at a masked stranger in a general store and treated him like a person. Don't you know how rare you are? 3 months into our marriage, everything came to a head in a way I never expected. We'd gone into town together. A rare occurrence because William usually sent Mrs. Davies for supplies. But I'd wanted to show him a bookstore that had just opened, and he'd agreed to come. We were browsing the shelves together when a group of young men from town spotted us. I recognized them, boys I'd gone to school with, boys who'd asked me to dances before, boys who now looked at me with something ugly in their eyes. Well, if it isn't Maggie Collins, one of them said loudly. Or should I say Mrs. Ashford now? How's married life treating you, Maggie? Worth the money? William's hand tensed on my arm. We should go, he said quietly. But I was tired. Tired of the whispers and judgment and cruelty. That scarred recluse. A few of the church ladies suggested to Mama that the marriage wasn't proper, that I'd sold myself. One day at the market, I overheard 2 women talking. Poor thing, one said. So young and trapped with that man. Can you imagine having to look at that face every day? Something in me snapped. I turned to face them directly. His name is William, I said clearly. He's my husband, and he's kinder and more honorable than most men I know. He saved my family when no one else would. So yes, I look at his face every day, and I'm grateful for everything it represents, sacrifice, survival, and choosing to keep living even when it's hard. Maybe you should think about that before you gossip. They scattered like startled birds, and I walked out with my head high. But when I got home, I cried in my room from the weight of it all. The judgment, the isolation, the strangeness of being 18 and married but not really married, caring for a man I was still learning to know. William found me there, knocked softly on my open door. I heard what happened at the market, he said quietly. Mrs. Davies' sister told her. Margaret, I'm sorry. You shouldn't have to defend. Don't, I said, wiping my eyes. Don't apologize for other people being small-minded. I meant what I said to them. He looked at me for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Why do you defend me, Margaret? You could take the settlement I offered and leave. Build a life away from all this gossip and judgment. You've already saved your family. Why stay? I thought about that question, really thought about it. Because, I said slowly, somewhere along the way, this stopped being just about my family or duty or obligation. You've been kind to me, William. You've treated me with respect and encouraged my dreams. You talk to me like I'm intelligent and worth listening to. You're patient with my sisters and generous with my parents. And underneath all that guilt and grief, it's treating me just fine, Bobby, I said evenly. Better than being a bully with nothing better to do than harass people in bookstores. Careful, Maggie. Another one sneered. Your monster might get upset. William tried to turn away, to leave with dignity, but Bobby stepped in front of us. What's under the mask, Ashford? Is it as bad as they say? Did you have to buy yourself a wife because no woman would have you otherwise? Stop it, I said sharply. You have no idea. Let me see, Bobby said, reaching for William's mask. Let's all see what our little Maggie sees every. He didn't get to finish. William's hand shot out and caught Bobby's wrist in an iron grip. You will not, William said, his voice low and dangerous in a way I'd never heard before. Disrespect my wife. You will not touch me. And you will leave this store now, before I forget I'm a gentleman. For a moment they stood frozen. Then Bobby yanked his hand back, his face red with embarrassment and anger. Freak, he muttered, and they left. William was shaking. I could feel it where his hand still rested on my arm. I'm sorry, he said. I shouldn't have let them get to me. I should have just walked away. No, I said fiercely. No, you did exactly right. You stood up for yourself. For us. I'm proud of you. But as we drove home, I could see the old shame settling back over him like a familiar coat. He was withdrawing, pulling back into the darkness he'd lived in for so long that night. I went to his rooms, something I'd never done before. I knocked on his door, and when he opened it, I saw he wasn't wearing the mask. He started to reach for it, to cover his face, but I stopped him. "Don't," I said. "Please don't hide from me. Margaret, you shouldn't be here. People will talk. Let them talk. I need to say something, and I need you to really hear me." He stepped back, letting me into his sitting room. It was warm and comfortable, lined with books and personal items. Photographs of James and Elizabeth kept lovingly on the mantel, not hidden away. "What happened today wasn't your fault," I said. "Those boys were cruel because they're small and scared and don't understand anything beyond their own narrow view of the world. But you, William, you've been letting their voices and voices like theirs drown out everything else for 10 years. You've been letting guilt and shame define your entire existence." "What else should define it?" he asked roughly. "What else am I besides the man who survived when better people died?" "You're a man who made a terrible mistake and has spent a decade punishing himself for it," I said. "You're a man who saved my family when he didn't have to. You're a man who treats an 18-year-old girl like her thoughts and dreams matter. You're a man who loved deeply and lost everything and is still here, still trying, still breathing. That's who you are, William. You don't understand. Then help me understand," I said, and I was crying now. "Help me understand why you think you deserve to live in this prison of guilt forever. Help me understand why you can't forgive yourself when everyone else already has. James's death wasn't your fault. Elizabeth's death wasn't your fault. And even if you made mistakes, even if you could have done things differently, you can't change the past. You can only choose what to do with the present." He sank down into a chair, his scarred face in his hands. "I don't know how to forgive myself, Margaret. I don't know how to let it go." I knelt in front of him, taking his hands in mine. "Then let me help you," I said softly. "Let me carry some of it with you. That's what marriage is supposed to be, isn't it? Not just living in the same house or sharing a name, but sharing the burdens too heavy to carry alone." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something break open in his eyes. "When did you get so wise?" he whispered. "I learned it from you," I said. "You taught me that kindness matters, that people are more than their worst moments, that there's always a choice to do better. Now I'm teaching it back to you." That night, we talked until dawn. William told me everything. The guilt that woke him at night, the nightmares where he heard the explosion over and over, the way he'd see James in crowds sometimes before remembering. I held his hands and listened and didn't try to fix anything, just let him speak the pain out loud. And somewhere in those dark hours before sunrise, something fundamental shifted between us. We stopped being the 18-year-old girl and the 42-year-old recluse bound by a practical arrangement. We became partners. Friends. Something deeper that I was still too young to fully understand but could feel growing like roots in good soil. After that night, William began the slow work of healing. Not forgetting, he'd never forget James and Elizabeth, but learning to carry the grief without letting it crush him. He started going into town more often with me. The first few times he wore the mask, but gradually, on quiet days when there weren't many people around, he'd leave it at home. Some folks stared. Some whispered. But slowly, a few began to nod in greeting, to accept him as part of the community. Mrs. Patterson, the pastor's wife, was one of the first to reach out. She came to visit one afternoon, and sat with William in the garden. "I lost a son in the war," she told him gently. "And I spent 2 years believing I could have stopped him from enlisting if I'd just said the right words. My husband finally told me something that helped. We can't control the world, only how we respond to it. You didn't plant that bomb, Mr. Ashford. You've just been living with the shrapnel." William cried when she left, but they were different tears, not just grief but release. My family embraced him fully. Daddy started inviting him to help, with projects around their house, fixing the porch, building a shed. Working side by side, they developed their own quiet friendship. Mama taught him her recipes, and on Sunday dinners at our house, William would help in the kitchen, laughing at his own mistakes. My sisters adored him. He'd play elaborate make-believe games with Sarah, help my middle sister Ruth with her mathematics homework, and have long conversations with Martha, who was 14 and full of questions about the world. He took their dreams seriously, encouraged their ambitions, and became the kind of father figure they'd needed when Daddy was too hurt and worried to be fully present. He's good for you, Mama told me one afternoon when we were alone. And you're good for him. I was wrong to worry, baby. This marriage, it's real, isn't it? I thought about that. Yes, I said. It's real. Just not in the way anyone expected. At the community college, I discovered a passion for teaching. I loved learning, but I loved even more the idea of helping others learn. William encouraged me to pursue it, to think about getting a full degree, maybe even teaching someday. You have a gift for explaining things, he said one evening while helping me prepare a presentation. You make complicated ideas accessible. That's rare, Margaret. You think I could really do it? Become a teacher? I think you could do anything you set your mind to, he said simply. You're 19 years old and you've already shown more courage and wisdom than most people develop in a lifetime. Teaching would be lucky to have you. His faith in me made me believe in myself in ways I never had before. But life, as it always does, threw us a curveball. It was a Tuesday in November, almost 6 months into our marriage, when William collapsed in the garden. I found him lying among the fallen leaves, conscious but disoriented, his left side weak. The doctor came quickly, a stroke, mild but concerning given. William's age and stress history. He needed rest, monitoring, and time to recover. The doctor pulled me aside afterward. Mrs. Ashford, your husband's been under tremendous stress for years. This stroke is a warning. He needs to reduce stress, take better care of himself, or the next one could be much worse. That night, I sat by William's bedside, watching him sleep. He looked vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before, older, frilier mortal. And I realized with a shock that ran through my whole body, I loved him. Not the practical love of duty or gratitude. Not the affection of friendship, though that was there too. But real love. The kind that makes your heart ache, that makes the thought of losing someone unbearable. I loved this complicated, damaged, kind man who'd saved my family and somehow, along the way, become my family too. When did it happen? I couldn't pinpoint a single moment. Maybe it was in all the small moments. The way he'd remember how I took my tea, the pride in his eyes when I did well on an exam, the gentleness with which he treated my sisters, the courage it took for him to face the town without his mask, the nights we'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. I loved him, and he was 42 and I was 19, and it wasn't what anyone would call a conventional love story, but it was ours. The stroke forced William to slow down, to accept help, to let me take care of him. He resisted at first. This man who'd been independent for so long, who'd carried everything alone. But gradually, he learned to lean on me. And I learned that being needed wasn't a burden but a privilege. During his recovery, we grew even closer. I'd read to him in the afternoons, and we'd discuss the books. I'd help him with the exercises the doctor prescribed. We'd sit in his room, not mine anymore, but his, and talk about everything from philosophy to what we'd plant in the garden come spring. One evening, about 2 weeks after the stroke, he took my hand. Margaret, he said quietly, I need to tell you something. My heart jumped. What is it? I'm 42 years old. You're 19. When we married, I thought I was offering you a temporary arrangement. A year or two at most before I'd be gone and you'd be free to live your life. But I'm recovering now, and the doctor says with proper care, I could have many years ahead of me. He paused, struggling with something. I won't keep you here out of obligation, he continued. If you want to leave, if you want to find someone your own age, build a different life, I'll understand. The agreement stands. Your family stays secure, and you'd have more than enough to start over anywhere you want. I looked at this man I'd married 6 months ago, this stranger who'd become my closest friend, who'd shown me what love could look like when it was built on respect and kindness and honesty. William, I said carefully, why would I leave? Because you're young, he said. Because you should have a normal life with someone who can give you children and decades together And what if I don't want normal? I interrupted. What if I want this? What if I want you? His breath caught. Margaret, you don't mean? I love you, I said. and saying it out loud felt like taking a leap off a cliff, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. I don't know when it happened exactly. Maybe it's been happening all along, so slowly I didn't notice. But I love you, William. Not because you saved my family, though I'm grateful for that. Not because you've been kind to me, though you have been. I love you because of who you are, all of you, scars and grief and courage and gentleness. I love you and I choose you and I'm staying. But the age difference, he started, is just a number, I said firmly. I know I'm young, William. I know people will judge. But I've never felt more sure of anything. These past 6 months with you have taught me more about life and love and strength than all the years before. You see me, really see me, and you've helped me become someone I'm proud to be. How could I walk away from that? He was crying now, this strong man reduced to tears in his recovery bed. I don't deserve you. Maybe not, I said, smiling through my own tears. But you're stuck with me anyway. That's what marriage means, remember? For better or worse, in sickness and health. I took those vows, William. And I meant them. He pulled me close then, holding me like I was something precious. Something he'd finally allowed himself to want. I love you too, he whispered against my hair. God help me, I love you too. I think I've loved you since you touched my face on our wedding night without fear. But I was afraid to say it, afraid to trap you, afraid it was wrong. It's not wrong, I said. It's just ours. Our marriage became real in every sense after that night. We moved into the same rooms. His because they had the better view, I said, though really it was because they felt like home. We built a life together that looked different from what anyone expected, but felt right for us. William taught me about business, about managing money and investments. He said if I was going to inherit everything eventually, I should understand how it all worked. I took to it surprisingly well, discovering I had a head for numbers and strategy. I finished my degree and started teaching at the local elementary school. William would help me plan lessons, and sometimes he'd come in as a guest speaker, talking to the children about history or literature. The kids loved him. Children don't see scars the way adults do. They just saw a kind man with interesting stories. The town gradually accepted us. It helped that we gave generously. William established scholarships for local students, supported the church and library, employed people from town for various projects. But more than the money, it was the fact that we lived openly, honestly, showing people that different kinds of love could be valid. My sisters grew up with William as a father figure. When Martha graduated high school, he walked her across the stage alongside Daddy, both men beaming with pride. When Ruth got married, William paid for the wedding and gave a toast that had everyone crying. And when Sarah decided to become a doctor, William told her she could be anything she wanted and meant it. Mama and Daddy grew old gracefully, secure and happy, able to enjoy their grandchildren without the weight of worry they'd carried so long. Mama painted beautiful scenes of our Kentucky mountains. Daddy built furniture in a workshop William had constructed for him. They'd come to Sunday dinner at our house, and the table would be full of laughter and love, and the kind of peace that comes from knowing you're exactly where you belong. William and I traveled, finally. We went to Philadelphia so he could visit the graves of James and Elizabeth, something he hadn't been able to do in years. It was hard, but healing. He introduced me to them, spoke out loud about the life we'd built, asked for their blessing in his heart. We saw the ocean, the mountains, the desert. We stayed in small hotels and grand ones, ate local food, talked to strangers, collected memories like precious stones. William without his mask, me without the weight of being too young, or too different. Just two people in love exploring the world together. We never had children of our own. The age difference in William's health made it complicated, and truthfully, I never felt the lack. I had my students, my nieces and nephews, and a husband who filled my life with meaning and purpose and love. But we did have each other, and that was enough. More than enough. Now I'm 65 years old, and William has been gone for 3 years. He lived to be 84. Far longer than anyone expected after first stroke. We had 47 years together, and every single one of them mattered. People still ask me sometimes about our unusual beginning. How did I manage being so young? Wasn't I angry about sacrificing my youth? Did I regret missing out on a normal life? And I tell them what I'm telling you now. Love doesn't follow a script. It doesn't care about age differences or conventional expectations, or what other people think should happen. Love grows where it's nurtured, in whatever soil it's planted. Yes, I was 18 when I married William. Yes, he was 42. Yes, we started from a practical arrangement born of desperation. But we built something real from that foundation. We chose each other every day, in ways big and small, and that's what made it work. I sacrificed some things. The carefree youth I might have had, the young romance with someone my own age, the conventional path most girls dream about. But I gained so much more. A partner who saw me as an equal despite our age difference, who encouraged my dreams, who taught me that strength comes in many forms, who showed me what it means to carry grief and still choose kindness. William taught me that we're all more than our worst moments. That forgiveness, of ourselves and others, isn't weakness but the hardest kind of strength. That love isn't about finding someone perfect but about choosing to see someone fully and loving them anyway. And I taught him, young as I was, that he deserved a second chance at happiness. That his past didn't have to define his future. That being vulnerable enough to let someone in, to risk love after loss, was its own kind of courage. If you're reading this, whoever you are, whatever age you are, I want you to hear this. Your love story doesn't have to look like anyone else's. It doesn't have to follow the timeline society expects or the pattern movies show us. It just has to be true. I was a poor girl who married a rich man to save my family, and I found love in the most unexpected place. Not despite the unusual circumstances, but maybe because of them. Because sometimes when we strip away all the normal expectations and courtship rituals, we're left with just the truth of two people trying to understand each other, to be kind to each other, to build something together. Was it easy? No. Was it conventional? Definitely not. Was it worth it? Every single day. The world will judge you no matter what you choose. They judged me for marrying William. Too young, too calculated, too strange. But the world didn't have to live my life. I did. And I chose to live it with honesty, with courage, with love that grew slowly from respect and kindness into something that sustained us for nearly 5 decades. So if you're facing an impossible choice, if you're weighing sacrifice against survival, if you're wondering whether love can grow from practical beginnings, I'm here to tell you it can. Not always, maybe. Not easily. But it can. Choose with your eyes open. Choose with honesty. Choose knowing that love is work, that building a life with someone takes effort every single day, that the difference between obligation and devotion is choosing to stay when you could leave. I chose to stay, and William chose to let me in. We chose each other day after day, year after year, building something beautiful from the most unlikely beginning. And when William died, peacefully in his sleep, in our bed, holding my hand, his last words to me were, "Thank you for seeing me, Margaret. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for teaching me that I deserve to be loved." I kissed his scarred face and whispered back, "Thank you for saving my family. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for loving me when I was too young to understand what a gift that was." I still live in the Ashford estate, though it's quieter now. My sisters visit with their children and grandchildren. I still teach part-time and run the foundation William and I built together. I still tend the gardens where we took our evening walks. And sometimes, in the soft light of evening when the fireflies come out, I swear I can still feel him here. That gentle presence that taught me so much about strength and sacrifice and love that grows slowly, steadily, like roots digging deep into good earth. This is my story. The story of how I married a millionaire to save my family, and found something far more valuable than money. The story of a man in a mask and a girl too young to know what she was getting into, but brave enough to try anyway. The story of how love can bloom in the most unexpected places, if we're courageous enough to let it. I'm 65 years old now, and if I could go back and talk to that frightened 18-year-old girl walking up the aisle toward a man she barely knew, I'd tell her this. Be brave, sweetheart. I know you're scared. I know this seems impossible. But you're about to discover that the human heart is so much bigger than you ever imagined. You're about to learn that love isn't always pretty or easy or conventional, but it's always worth fighting for. You're about to meet your best friend, your teacher, your partner, your love. He's just wearing a mask right now. But you're going to help him take it off, and he's going to help you become the woman you were always meant to be. The road ahead isn't easy, but it's yours. Walk it with your head high and your heart open. Choose love, even when it's strange. Choose kindness, even when it's hard. Choose to see people beyond their scars, beyond their mistakes, beyond what the world says they should be. And most of all, remember this. Your worth isn't determined by your age or your circumstances, or what you have to sacrifice. Your worth is in your courage to keep choosing love, keep choosing growth, keep choosing to become more fully yourself even when the path is uncertain. That's what William gave me, and what I gave him in return. And that's what I'm giving you now. Permission to write your own story, to trust your own heart, to know that love comes in many forms and all of them are valid if they're chosen honestly and nurtured with care. The mask William wore wasn't really about his scars. It was about protection, about keeping the world at a distance because he'd been hurt so badly. We all wear masks of one kind or another. Shields we put up to keep ourselves safe from judgment, from pain, from vulnerability. But real love, the kind that lasts, the kind that transforms us, asks us to take the masks off, to be seen fully, scars and all, to trust that someone will look at the truth of who we are, and choose to stay anyway. I saw William and I stayed. He saw me and he stayed. And for 47 beautiful, complicated, perfectly imperfect years, we built a life together that mattered. That's all any of us can hope for, really. To be seen, to be chosen, to build something that matters with whatever time we're given. So here's my prayer for you, whoever you are. May you find someone who sees you. May you have the courage to let them. May you build something beautiful together, no matter what form it takes. And may you know, deep in your bones, that you are worthy of love. Not perfect love, because that doesn't exist, but real love. The kind that grows and changes and deepens with time. The kind that lasts. The kind that, in the end, makes every sacrifice worth it. My name is Margaret Rose Ashford, and this is my story. Thank you for listening. Thank you for letting an old woman remember and honor the love that shaped her life. And thank you for believing that love stories don't have to be conventional to be true. They just have to be honest. And mine was honest all the way through.